Following is an interview with Dr. Walter S. Mietus, Mietus, 10818 Pleasant Acres, Adelphi, Maryland. Lecture conducted by Dr. Charles Johnson, Center for the Study of War and Society, University of Tennessee, August 9th, 1995.
One here is when I think about those experiences back there, I get mixed up between the feelings of a boy back then, and I'm looking at it as an older person now, and I'm saying, God, how could a young kid do that? You know, why was a kid exposed to that? Particularly in the impossible situations of going up a cliff after you first cross a river, and the enemy is up there in the cliff shooting down, like the 417th Infantry. It doesn't say a thing about it in that book. But they had to cross the Saale River with the guns hitting the boat sank. My buddy was killed, and I was in the 385th, so we were in reserve. But when I was there in reserve and became aware of the situation, I thought that is the stupidest thing anybody would tell somebody to do. Go through that area, go through the river, go up the cliffs. Well, I think the 417th lost, maybe a whole company, just a little attempt. But then when I think of it, how I felt when I was a kid, I wasn't that afraid. I felt that I'll make it, you know, or death isn't so bad or something. It was just you did what you had to do. How old were you? At that time, 19.
How old were you when you went in the service?
19.
You went 19.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. I went in the service in 19. I have all this written at home. I haven't reviewed this for a long time. I graduated from high school in 1942, February 42. And then I bounced around. I completed courses in the technical high school. Tilden Tech of Chicago was a very interesting school. It was all for totally boys. And they gave you the opportunity or guided you to get two things, college prep and a trade. So I took aircraft engine mechanics for a year. I took a lot of drafting for several semesters. And when I graduated, the war efforts was blooming all over Chicago, and they were putting up a naval factory for weaponry for the Navy, and they were putting up you're taking that off. And they were putting up factories for building aircraft engines. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's great. I mean, I had a whole year. I had aircraft engines 1, aircraft engines 2, a whole year, and I applied. I went to the personnel person, and the guy said, oh, this looks good. This looks nice. Oh, you had machine shop, too. Yeah, and you had a lot of good math, and you had good record in science. And, yeah, okay. I wanted a job. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. I see that you're classified A, which means you're draft A1, 1A, that's right. Well, prior to graduating from high school, we got the papers for induction to fill those things out. So in the meantime, the school process is this, gets to the right places, and then later I go take an exam, a physical, and a mental, and 1A. So I was happy about that, because I would feel so bad for how it turned out. We all wanted to get in. And I went to that employer, and then he said, we'll call you. And we didn't have a phone. The lady next door had a phone, so I gave the lady next door's phone. The guy calls up, and he said, you know, you're 1A, and we see that you would need some training in internal grinding and things of that sort. We'd have to train you, and it would mean an investment on our part. And if we do that, you may be inducted. So couldn't get you, what do you call it? Permit. Well, about my father, okay, he was illiterate when he was a boy. He came from a big family. There was a family near Zakopane, which is near Krakow, that had no children at all. And they needed somebody to tend the sheep. So my father, as a young boy, instead of going to school, was given to that family. And so my father's oldest brothers were interested in leaving Poland, so they joined the German army. This is back before World War I. There, they could earn hard currency. So the two brothers joined the German army, got hard currency, came to the United States, went to Chicago, worked in the meatpacking plant. Their job required them to be there 5 in the morning, and they would work until 7 in the evening. So they worked in the meatpacking plant all day long. Prior to leaving that employment, they brought my father over, who was the youngest brother for them. They brought him over. And then the two older brothers said, enough. At least when they lived in Poland, they worked on a farm. They were poor. The scenery was beautiful, but it was a hard struggle. But they said they'd rather die under the sun and seeing the nice weather and stuff than inside of a plant. So they ran right back. And my oldest uncle somehow got caught up in World War I, ended up in Siberia, died in a Siberian camp. And now my father got married to a king from about the same region. And she had 3 years of education. She was very, very smart woman. And she created her own dictionary. She got to the States. She married my father, and it was a matriarchal family. Her mother was the one who did the thinking and gave direction. And she was a wonderful person. And I had 4 sisters. None of them completed high school. The oldest one, who is still living, I communicate with very frequently, speaks Polish because in our home we spoke Polish, and we all Polish speaking. I went to Polish Catholic elementary school. You received the morning in Polish language. You received religion in Polish, history of Poland in Polish. Now the religion in Polish cited all the martyrs, the sacrifices they made, and how they believed in religion, and how wonderful that is to fight for a purpose and for a goal. Then in the afternoon, in American history, it was, to be an American, to be like our forefathers, the sacrifices they made, and heroism, and all these things.
You got it from both directions.
Yes. And then when I finished the elementary school, Polish Catholic elementary school, I wanted so badly to go to public high school because I saw that there was some difference. I wasn't able to analyze it, but the boys that went to public school seemed to have more fun. Where we were regimented. You came there in the morning, 8 o'clock, and you went to church. First thing in the morning, went to church. And you were marched. At the end of the hall in this school was a piano. And one boy would be designated to go to the piano and pump the piano, and it would be a military march that was played off the piano roll. And we'd all march, trample, march to the church. Column of twos. Went to church, came back from church, and we studied. And there was some difficulty for me because a lot of the kids had nice little things for a break. They had a recess. I had nothing. The Catholic school required a tuition. My family couldn't pay it. So we were one of the families that got free Catholic education and school. But nevertheless, I didn't like it, but they were very good. Because when I got to a public high school, I couldn't believe what was happening. The English class, the teacher, Mrs. Burns, gave us an assignment to write a theme. I went home and wrote the theme, handed it in, no sweat. And the next day, I was so embarrassed because she said, Walter, would you come over here? Would you stand here next to her desk? And she's reading my thing. God, this is all boys' school. And I said, you see how it's organized? You hear how this thought is evolved? And she pins it up there on the bulletin board. She said, you sit up front. Hey.
Tough on a kid.
So I immediately see that they did a good job in language skills. Yeah. Writing, anyway. I may not communicate verbally too well, but when it came to writing, I had all the kids beat in high school. Well, then, when we were in the senior year, we were talking about the war and what do you want to do? This guy wants to be a pilot. This guy wants I want to be a pilot too. I don't want to be in the infantry. Who wants to be in that? You get in that dirty mud and so forth. And the guy said, I'm going to join the Navy because my father said you learn a trade. And I wanted to be a pilot. The influence of the movies, James Stewart and all that glamorous stuff, the planes flying and so forth. But if you look into the history of drafting and enlistment, there's a period of time in November about 43 or 44 where enlistments, you could not enlist for a given time. Did you ever hear that?
Yeah, a good part of the war that was the case because they wanted, the military wanted to be able to funnel people where they needed them rather than where they wanted to go.
Yeah, I'm glad you know that. Well, I had my classification, and I wanted to, first, I went to the Marine place. And they turned me down. They said, you got an overbite within the second impingement. I remember that. I don't know what it meant. I still don't know. So, okay, the Marines are out. And then I wanted the Navy or the Air Force. So I had to wait it out. And I was drafted. It was interesting because they sent us to Fort Sheridan, Illinois, and placed us in a large hall, and they were administering these tests. And I was trying to beat the test because, well, if I scored good in this sound interpretation, they're going to put me in Signal Corps. I don't want Signal Corps. They give you a tone, and they said, you will hear 3 other tones, 1, 2, and 3, and on your paper, put which one of those sounds like the first one. They go bing, and then there's several other ones. And so I thought, well, I don't want Signal Corps, so I just put it down. Hell, they're going to put me in that. I don't want that. But I tried on some of the others, particularly the technical ones. I figured, well, if I show my skill there, I'll be placed in some kind of maybe mechanical place where mechanical aptitude is required. But it didn't work that way. They just took all these guys, put them into the 44th Infantry Division and then Fort Lewis, Washington. And I had basic infantry training. And then somebody divined the fact that I should be a medic. So they gave me maybe 5 weeks of training as a medic. That would be how to administer morphine, how to take out blood, how to give bandages, first aid, things about hygiene that I could communicate to the troops. Then the Army and the Air Force were one unit. There was an ad in a some kind of a Tacoma Park or a Tacoma, Seattle newspaper. And I saw it one Sunday morning, and it said, the enlistments to the Army Air Corps are open. I guess they saw a great loss of men
They
at
were
that
losing
time.
pilots pretty heavily in 43, I know.
Mm-hmm. So they opened them up, and I filled out the form, applied. The form was mailed to a certain place. And prior to that, I wrote letters to General Hap Arnold. And one day they called all the guys, this is in the 44th Infantry Division. They called us all out and gave us a lecture about the chain of command. You do not write letters. Somehow my letters were getting somewhere, and they trickled out from the top down there. I was telling General Hap Arnold, you know, the skills I had and what I wanted to do.
That's
But it
wonderful.
came to be. You know, it seems like if you keep it in mind, it'll come. So I filled out that form, mailed it in, and sometime later a letter came, and I was told to pack up. I'm going to Fort McCord base. McCord base in Oregon, a short distance. There I was like detached. I was no longer with the 44th Infantry. I was detached. I was some kind of a figure just floating around in the building. I had no duties. Hardly anybody ever came around to check. I was like a lost soul. And finally something came. Everything took 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, the message came that I have the orders. I still have the orders. That I and about 12 other guys from the division are going down to Amarillo, Texas, for further tests and examinations for qualifications for the Air Force. So when we went down there, and we had all kinds of examinations and psychomotor skills. Some of them required you to take a wand, which was on a spring, and was electrically charged, so that it was a rotating disc, and there's a little tiny dot that you had to follow, and they would speed it up, and they measure your abilities in that particular dimension. And there was depth perception, looking over a table with 2 sticks in the distance. We had to do that. Yeah. And then they spun us around in some devices, and then asked us to walk a straight line. Spun us around to touch your nose and this and all kinds of things. And then the one that I really didn't understand till years later when I made a mental flashback was this. In Amarillo, Texas, they had a big pile of scrambled wood, looked like beaten up railroad cars, just stacked up real high. Then years later, I took the picture in mind, and I remember seeing this booth that looked like an outhouse over here, and the booth was an outhouse over there. And it hit me like lightning. There must have been observers in there, because they gave us an assignment. They said, gentlemen, you know, there's about 16 of us. You have to do something we need badly. We're going to have to put a building here in this spot, like a barrack. We want this stuff moved over to where the lines are designated. Then they left. And we were there with no leadership. Nobody, you know, we were standing looking at each other. Well, let's go. I took some stuff and walked over and put it down. First, I thought maybe I should put them in an orderly manner, but nobody said orderly manner. Right? Took another trip. I took another one, and hell. Then I'd walk, throw it. And other guys took the longboards and made a litter. They stacked the stuff, and then 4 guys picked up this huge litter and carried it there. Well, now I'm thinking, you know, there's something going on. I didn't realize it then, but we were receiving some kind of evaluation. I don't know what it was, and I'd sure like to get the records, if there are any military records, on what they were doing there.
Someplace there.
Yeah. I'd like to see what they thought of me. Well, at Amarillo, Texas, they decided I did not have any college preparatory work, and that the Air Force required at least 2 years of college or some equivalency. So they sent a number of us to Moorhead, Minnesota State Teachers College, which was transformed into an air cadet school. So we had classes from 8 in the morning till 5:30, 5 days a week. The 6th day, we flew indoctrination flying at Hector Air Force. Well, it was Hector Air Force Base, but today it's Hector Air Force. Today it's Hector Airport, I think. We had such wonderful experiences there. We were learning. We were doing good. We had the book from West Point was in our room. And we had to study it because every now and then we were challenged as to what it would say about certain concepts, such as define military discipline. And if I recall, the first line was something like, military discipline is that mental attitude and state of training which renders obedience under all conditions. That was the first line. If you get that West Point book, look at that. And you tell that to somebody today. Under all conditions. We accepted it. For our meals, we had long tables, white cloth tables. We had candles on the tables. We had china, maybe it was ceramic, but we had the silverware. We ate square meals, no talking. One man was in charge of the whole table. Occasionally, the lady in charge of the kitchen would give us classes on proper approach to eating, mannerisms. The English teacher in literature would teach us about courtesy, mannerisms, the behavior, polite behavior, things of that sort. They're trying to make gentlemen out of sow's ears, which was very nice. I mean, I never had such a nice time as there. And then in about...
Before you go out, what did you folks think about you going to the service? Was this...
my mother took it hard. My father, I don't know how he took it because he was not very expressive. But the day that I was leaving to Fort Sheridan, it was early in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. I had a report to the draft board, whereupon there was a bus waiting for me. My mother and father came up to me and excuse me. One day, when I was in the Air Force, in the Army training, the Air Force training there, we completed our college training. We were packing up to go to California for our basic training, because that was just indoctrination flying, and that was to bring you up academically to be able to face some of the more challenging work in the Air Force.
Had you done any flying yourself? Were you in the cockpit doing flying?
Yeah, it was the very second day. The trainer, he sat in the front seat, we sat in the back. Mm-hmm. We had gasport equipment. What that is the trainer up front would be able to talk to us, and we had these mechanical devices in our ears, much like a doctor has. Yeah. And he would talk to us, but we could not talk back to him. And so occasionally he would give us some harassment. Just chew you out, and try to get you upset. And in the middle of a maneuver. And I did make a boner one time, but he said he gave me exceptional grades for that particular course. One time a mistake was doing a figure eight. I just made a mistake and put it into a dive. And I made the bank and the turn, and I started going. Now instead of grabbing the controls to make matters worse for me, I knew something went wrong, and he could see me in the mirror. He threw up his hands like this, like he's ready to jump out of the plane. But then he saw still responding correctly, so he grabbed the controls, and we were in his spin, and he straightened it out. And then I never heard of the end of that, and that was in my 9th hour, and the 10th hour would be the last one. And he told me, Walter, I gave you perfect grades all the way up to this point. What went wrong? I don't know what went wrong. I just momentarily lost something. But we were all packed. We were going to go to California for basic training. The next day, after we were packed, there was a letter from Hap Arnold. And the Captain Bazada, in charge of Moorhead, Minnesota, the Air Cadet Training Program, called us all out, and he had a booming voice, and giving us some very important information. We thought it's going to be, we're going to California. And he said, I have a letter to read to you from Hap Arnold. And he regrets that he has to let us go because men are needed in the ground forces. And Hap Arnold said he realizes that we are eager to face the enemy. I have that letter. I'll send you a copy. We're eager to face the enemy, and that we wouldn't mind giving up our training so that we can carry out these new assignments. And that we are potential officers, and that when we return to the ground forces, we should go to OCS. Oh, geez, that was awful. So they packed us up and sent us to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin.
It's a big camp.
Yeah, and we had cadet uniforms. They were nice officers' upper things. They're not like the GI stuff.
Yeah, the blouses.
The blouse, yeah. We had the wing here on the cuff and a wing in the calf, garrison cap, really sharp, pleated in the back. And when we were there in Moorhead, Minnesota, we were met by a tailor who tailored our clothes. Our shirts were form-fitted, pleated in the back. Oh, what a spiffy outfit. Then we had to go to Camp McCoy and turn all this in. Turn that in, and we got, this stuff doesn't fit. This is too big, and it looks like a rag. Then one of the officers, who must have been ready to retire, very illustrious man, tall, gray, good physical posture, the appearance of almost a movie star. He had the cavalry leggings, leather leggings, and swagger stick. He had us come to the ball field. He had a little stand. He's tapping the stick. He said, you know what? You were going to be technicians. That's all you would be, a technician. He said, now you're going to be a real soldier. You're going to face the enemy eye to eye. Oh, dude. So he gave us that particular talk. I'll never forget that again. And so we, I don't want to be that. I want to be a pilot because I want to be a pilot after the war. I want to be. And so our morale was real low. And for days we talked about it because they didn't have much duty for us there. They were quite clear as to how they're going to divide us and assign us. Okay, then.
When would this have been? 1943?
44.
44.
May.
May.
What went after D-Day?
Okay, it would be June, July 44 then. D-Day is in June
Oh, no, wait.
44.
Wait. Must have been before D-Day. I have the dates at home. Yeah, I have that all along. I kept a log.
If you could send me a copy of that. So now you're going to meet the enemy eye to eye.
Yeah. Okay, we're there in Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. It's Camp House Fort today. And we're talking about it. Hey guys, you're going to take a chance to go to OCS? And so, well, what about that? What would you be? Well, you'd be a platoon leader, become a lieutenant. So, what other things do lieutenants do? And well, you just figure out some strategy, lead the men. We start going, what's the position of the guy? Does he tell the guys to go and stay behind? No, you go up front and display leadership. Well, what's the life of an infantryman? Some guy said, well, in combat, 40 seconds. Well, I was called into the day room. That was my turn. And they were asking me questions about what's happening in the Pacific. What do you think is going to happen there? And what strategies do you think the military should take in the Pacific? They asked me about some islands I never heard of before. And I admitted the fact that I wasn't keeping up at all. I basically just picked up a few good books now and then and wasn't following that. It seemed to be too complicated. And they said, well, how would you like to go to OCS school? I said, sir, at the present time, my morale is pretty low. And I don't know if at this moment I'd make a good officer. I don't think maybe I would. So, okay. There were 3 officers sitting at the table listening to this one's question. Okay, you can go now. And they had to stand up and salute, turn on, go out. So I was assigned to medical battalion. See, in November we went to England. If I back up, maybe I was 6 months in Camp McCoy. With the medical battalion, we had classes and lessons and so forth. And we have to go to the firing range and do the observations, making sure that nobody gets hurt. If they get hurt, exercise the proper techniques. Then
training was pretty good.
I was bored. I was very bored. After I got into combat, I wasn't seeing the wounds that I was taught to cover. The first bad one I saw was an entire scalp gone. And yet, it seemed the guy was conscious. His eyes were moving.
When you were in the States you were at McCoy, say from April or the spring of 44 to the fall of 44, and
then we left for England. We were in England in 44, Bournemouth, England, and we jumped off and got up in January. We were in France, but right at the border of Luxembourg.
Did you enjoy being in England? Were you there very long? Or,
No, I didn't enjoy being there. It was cold, it was damp, and it was black and white. Those book covers there are black and white, and that's the way England looked to me at the time. Bournemouth, because there was no heat, there was no electricity. I had to spend a whole Saturday to find a place to get a bath. We lived in a big hotel. I went down to the bowels of the hotel to find a laundry room. It was all damaged. Nothing would work. The towns close by were restricted. We couldn't go outside of Bournemouth to the next town. We were confined to that particular area. And it was damp and cold, and you're on the ocean. So I would go to the beach and look out at the water. But that was depressing because they were the railroad barriers. Behind the railroad barriers, or before it, were barbed wires. And then known to every Englishman was the fact that there were pipes that carried fuel oil through the pipes deep out into the water, So if the invasion was occurring there, they would release the oil and ignite it, and the whole char would be burning. Then near every corner of the city was a huge tank, which today when I look at a swimming pool that the people put up in their backyards, plastic thing, big circle. Well, those are types of things that they had on corners filled with water so that their firemen could fight the fires from the incendiary bombs. Occasionally you could hear a V-2 rocket bomb going overhead. You could hear bursting of bombs in the distance. And then we ask the question, is that theirs coming over or is that ours practicing? Question.
Now, you were with the 76th by then? Or?
Yeah. That was the 76th Infantry, also in Camp Coin. The 76th Infantry Division was a training division for a long time. They were Fort Meade, Maryland. And while they were in Fort Meade, Maryland, they trained men that went off to form other divisions. One of the men trained in Fort Meade was Audie Murphy, who was then sent to another division.
You went off the 3rd Infantry, I think, the 45th.
Mm-hmm.
You went to France. You crossed the Channel.
Yeah.
And go to Cherbourg or
No, we were landed in Le Havre.
in the Havre.
Now that was a terrible scene. Coming in on this was a Polish ship. Yeah, a Polish ship that ran across. I felt at home. Then aboard the ship, it was a fishing ship. It like a miniature factory, I guess. They caught fish and did so. So they cleaned it up, but it still smelled of fish. So we crossed there, and somehow we got hung up on a sandbar or something real hard. And it was the longest time before they got something over. And sometimes that particular gangplank wasn't hooked up right. The boat moved and fell, and the guys fell in the water. Not to get hurt, but just messed up. And it was cold. It was very cold. November, December, extremely cold. By the time we unloaded, it took all day to get the guys together and organized. We couldn't build fires. We were forbidden to build fires. We were very cold. But we were able to go to a big pile of our duffel bags, A and B. And we knew what's in each bag. So they said, go to your duffel bag and take out as many clothes that you feel you could wear and put them on. Because you won't see those bags anymore. So we go, I put my winter underwear on. I put my OD, the brown pants, put those on. I put fatigue pants on top of that. Well, we got issued new combat field jackets. We didn't have them in England, but we got some over there. And under I had a knit brown sweater. Under that, an OD shirt. And then a winter underwear shirt. Then over all that, I put my overcoat. And a cap, which was wool, and then the helmet. And gloves.
What kind of boots do you have?
Now that's a sore point. Because we had our combat shoes. No boots. You know, the combat shoes with the thing here. No, they were reversed leather, where the smooth part of the leather was inside and the rough part was on the outside. But if you got caught in water, it meant you soaked your feet. Well, there we were. From that point all the way to Luneray, Luneray. It's near Luxembourg over there, the country of Luxembourg. We were without boots. And finally, somebody smartened up and they airdropped boots. But all those boots were secondhand. They came from casualties. So we made a dash in the snow to get these boots. And the boots that I got were just much too large, so I stuffed it with straw. And you want to see an awkward-looking bunch. Shoes that don't fit and they're walking around.
All the socks that you could put on and then straw.
Yes. And speaking of socks, that's interesting because after that point, I never got another pair of GI shorts. What we would do is, once we were committed to combat, we'd go through these little villages and towns, and you'd run. When you had an opportunity, you'd go into a bombed out house and go through some stuff and get a pair of socks. So I had sometimes white wool socks, sometimes green ones, sometimes blue ones. Then I would also change my underwear. I didn't have my GI underwear on, whatever I could find. And there was a lot of it to be found if you had the opportunity to look for it.
Were you attached to a particular company or a battalion?
Yes.
Or?
When we were out in France, our whole medical battalion was broken up into separate units that would serve a regiment. And then they broke this group up into guys that will serve each platoon. And it was out there in the cold. It was so cold, unbelievably cold. Some guys got frostbite. That they said, okay, guys, we're going to make it possible so that the first guy's assigned to a platoon. You'll be there a week or two, and then we're going to rotate you and send another guy in your place. It never happened. Once you were out there, you were stuck. So I was assigned to one platoon and hung with them for a long time.
Which company, battalion, do you remember?
Oh, yeah. It was the 385th Infantry Regiment, 1st Battalion, Company C, Charlie Company, 1st Platoon. And I get together with them every year. A couple of times I was asked to leave the platoon and go with another one, which was probably more in a more hazardous position. And I didn't like that because, of course, they have their own medic. But they lost him. They did not send a replacement. And the bad thing about that was I didn't know those fellows as well as I knew these. And there was just such a need to know who you're looking at, because sometimes I had to write out a slip, a tag. The rule was when you get to an injured man, you figure out what's wrong with him, write up a tag, give him the proper aid, and then ask the guy with the radio to contact somebody back there to come and pick him up. Well, sometimes the radio didn't work. I was laying there. We had a guy laying about 10, 12 hours. And he was bad shape. Well, I didn't like being assigned to another platoon. I like to stay with this one, but occasionally I had to do that, and I didn't like it. And then what got me more disturbed was the fact that I was supposed to be rotated with somebody. Well, what happened? I don't know. Maybe back there they changed officers and forgot their plan, and so that was. But again, to practice what I was taught, there just wasn't enough training for some of the things. For example, the guy had shrapnel and his jawbone was severed here, the jawbone was hanging, and he didn't have a compressed bandage. I don't know where he lost his. Couldn't take his off. And I fumbling around, and then I looked down on the ground. There's a hanger wire, clothes hanger wire. Mm-hmm. Well, I took that, and it worked real well. I just happened to loop just right, put it around, and then I bandaged it up. I said, man, a hanger wire is the best thing you can do because you need another hand if you're going to do a bandage thing. This way, I just flipped it around and tied it around, and it held real well. So in my 2 cases, I had one here and one here. I had all kinds of stuff. I even carried cognac, a bottle of cognac, and I carried some candies as, a guy would say, God, he's got a terrible headache. I said, oh, okay, we'll take care of it. I got some stuff for him, man. This is real good. I gave him a little sweet candy, What the hell is it? I said, well, that's a new kind of stuff. Well, let's see, what do you call that when you give somebody a substitute for
Placebo.
Placebo, right, I forgot that one. So I used some placebos, and I had that secret. I like my secret. Battle of the Bulge, and they're the ones who were pushing the enemy back to Siegfried Line. So when I saw these guys, that's the first time I saw real fatigue in the faces of men. I didn't let it bother me, but I wondered about it. And it's not till later that I figured these things out. I see these images, these faces. And later I said, yeah, that's what was happening.
Been in the line too
These
long?
guys, yeah, they had that faraway look. And when I talked to them, they were not communicating. They weren't talking to me. I wanted to talk about things, and they didn't want to. Oh, we had to fill their foxholes. They were relieved. And I thanked them for the foxholes because I didn't have to dig one. And he wasn't responsive. He wouldn't smile. He wouldn't acknowledge anything. And you would think he would express great relief. No, he just walked away. And then in that position that we were, well, C Company had that whole particular section, and the nights were awful because the guys said they see German patrols sneaking in and coming around. Then some guys, one guy in our company inflicted himself. Couldn't stand it.
Shot foot or
Hand. He was standing guard duty through the night. It's a funny thing. You begin to see things. And maybe he just became so terrified and he pulled the trigger and blew his hand. And then another guy went psycho, and he was a sergeant. He was asked to make some decisions. What are we going to do? He couldn't make a decision. He was very disturbed. He was crouched down in the couch. I don't know. And the guys are eager. Come on, what are we going to do? You know. So that was the case for a nice fellow occasionally. He spun out of it very nicely. Got married and he worked all his life. A big fellow, huge fellow. Somebody gave him rank on the basis of his physical stature and his bearing, but it wasn't, the real stuff wasn't there.
this happened to him pretty quickly as you got started?
Yeah. That started maybe about the first 3 weeks. The first ordeal was to go to relieve for the, we're in a Siegfried line, and to go through the line, so you had to go through a minefield. The minefields were marked with little buttons like 50-cent pieces, which were luminous. The engineers would crawl there and swing their things and mark maybe the 42-inch swat. A button here, a button there, stuff like that. That would be the path that you could go. We were supposed to go up that path. But then we had to do it at night because during the day we were visible and there were easy targets. So we were doing it at night. And luckily, the path I was in, the first guy was able to see those visibly. But the group to the right of us, the other platoon, was going in that path, and evidently some mud and somebody kicked up some mud or something and covered it. The guy drifted off, and the other guys followed. And the nicest guy, who studied to be a priest in his civilian life, he is the first guy to step on. The guys behind him, wounded. So that was a bad experience. Then right shortly after that, we got into the pillboxes. And we were targets now because they knew where we were. The enemy had every pillbox marked. We try to communicate from pillbox to pillbox. And this is almost like a story from the movie because we had 2 Mexican boys from Arizona or something. They spoke Spanish. So we had one Mexican in one pillbox and we were on the other one. And they talked Spanish. So that was a really good move. But then Yeah, you had to move out of these pillboxes into the open. And let's see, where we met some resistance. And this young man broke down. He was supposed to take charge. He couldn't. And you would get missions over the radio. Take the hill, get across the low stream, hold it, go up on a high ground, hold it until 12 o'clock, things like that. And I was in a kind of, sometimes in the best seat of the show. Because my platoon, the mission would come maybe 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning to take this little burg or little town. And I would be in the back. I have to observe and listen what the plan is. The platoon, full strength, should be around 40 men, and an officer. We lost an officer really fast. Didn't have one through the entire war. We didn't have a commissioned officer. We had sergeant.
Hit by artillery fire or shot or do you know?
For some reason, he was called back and never came back.
Oh,
And the hypotheses were that he was capable of speaking Japanese. He was an expert in language, what they call him. That was a hypothesis. You know, we don't never know where you know.
but he's just gone.
Yeah. And the guy that took charge was old army man. But shortly thereafter, he was killed too. And then the younger guy took over. For example, moving to take a little town, we would have a rough idea what to expect. But the enemy knew exactly where the hell we're going to walk. They knew exactly where they're going to hide. And everything was just like a surprise. You had an idea, but then all of a sudden, here's something that we didn't know about, and it's a little round, concrete thing, and there's a guy over there, and he knows we're coming. Yeah, I'm in the back seat, and the plan sometimes would be, okay, one squad, you go to the left, you do this, and that. Another squad, you go take the point, you go up the main street here, and this squad, you go to the right. This main group that's left, maybe 14, 15 men, we stay in behind and wait for what's going to be the next move and the best idea that will emerge from whatever they feel out. And so I would see all this, whereas the guys that were in these squads, they didn't see what I saw. You know, and I saw the picture, and sometimes I would lose sight of some guys. And unfortunately, if I lost sight of them, I didn't see them get shot. Moving through, an idea to make this a little forest area, moving through it. I'm in the back, and they're moving through. And in the corner of my eye, I would see a young man take a fall, which was something you never saw before. You know how when you saw your friends through exercise over the years, every morning we had exercise and running and diving and doing all those things. You know how that looks. But when a guy gets hit, that's a total different picture. It's something you know that guy had to have anybody holler, hey, because if you see it, you know this guy, the hand, you know, in a funny position, like it's a piece of rubber, or the head snaps back, or the way they drop on their knees, you know, funny contortions, you know. And so I would have to go there and see what I could do for him. Well, I was taking care of this one fella. We're getting tree bursts. The artillery, German artillery, or mortars, they had it all zeroed in because they knew where we were going. They knew what path we're going to have to take. They sighted us. They saw us. And they're pounding that area with mortars. And the stuff is flying down. And this guy's hurt. And I look at him, and he's got a shrapnel here. He's got a piece of shrapnel over there. And so I had a knife, which I picked up from some home, rather than scissors, which I had. I took a knife from the store. I saw there was no squirting blood. It was just coming out rapidly. So I put a bandage on there and tightened it up. And I put a patch on here. The funny thing, I had shrapnel here, but it was not bleeding. It just left a black burn mark. And I was wondering, well, that was my first time that I saw no blood, but yet a lump back there. They never told me that in training. They never told me that, or they didn't tell me what to do when you just see a brain with no scalp. So I just left it alone. That was the best thing to do.
What was the shrapnel in the shoulder there that wasn't bleeding? What had happened?
Well, I guess it went into the muscle.
Into the muscle? It
Yeah.
It was hot.
And I saw a lot of
serious?
that. I saw an awful lot of it. And that's the first time I saw it, and I never realized that. Then I saw others, many of them that way, with shrapnel and no bleeding, just a black mark from a burn and a lump. Well, this young man was somewhat calm, and I'm doing the stuff for him, and I'm asking his name. I'm following the book now. I'm saying, "What's your name?" I write it down because he was new, and I put a tag on him. And just as I'm putting the tag on, another shell came over the top and threw down 5-pound shrapnel, and it came across my wrist. Just made a little scar, but I'm the medic, see? And I look at it and, oh, well, that's superficial. So I just poured some sulfanilamide on it and poured my jacket sweater down over it. And I didn't even bandage. I didn't think it needed a bandage. I had a lot of faith in sulfanilamide. They told me. So this young man, I gave him sulfon, and then I gave him an injection of morphine. Did you ever see those syringes? Yeah. I gave him Surette, yeah. I gave him that shot, and I told him, I said, just take it easy. I'm going to take your rifle. He had a bayonet on it. I said, I'm sticking the rifle in the ground, and I put a bandage here, and we're going to call, and the guy's going to come and pick you up. But now what happened? I'm working with this guy, and the whole platoon decides they're going to go on a fast trot. They're in the woods, and I'm there. I look around. There's nobody. I'm supposed to follow them. That was my perspective. I always follow them faithfully, but this time I don't know where the hell they went. I went one way, and then I saw a wire on the ground, which was communication wire. I figured, well, our guys are laying wire. I'm going to follow the wire. But I went to a certain distance, and I heard German voices. They were in America. So I turned around, and I ran, and I'm in this forest back to where this wounded guy is, and then I started to get small rifle fire. And I was like a rabbit in the woods. I was just running from place to place. This young man went to sleep. It was all right. And then they dropped white phosphorus. They dropped white phosphorus. And I'm the only guy there because my main group is over there. So they're wrong. They got the wrong guy.
You didn't even have a weapon.
No, I didn't. But wait, later I get one. After I see what's happening, when we start following the armored division, I would see ambulances. The ambulances were mangled. They were shot up. They were torn up. Then we had night movements. We had to move into positions during the secrecy of the night movement. And here I am. I had an armband and a white thing on my helmet. And the guys were saying, God, excuse me, damn it, Walter. You're revealing our position. And I sympathized with them. So I smeared this thing, got it real dark with mud, and I kept it there. I took the armband off. Then my friends who were trained with me in the medical battalion, we had heavy casualties in the medics. They had to get up and help them. And I figured what they're doing to these medics, well, I'm going to exercise the right to protect myself. I'm not going to wait for some guy to have the first shot at me. So I carried the 45 in my bag. The guys in my platoon know it, but I wasn't supposed to. But I told them, this is war. What am I going to do? You know, somebody's going to come after me, and I say, wave this thing. And they gave me a little plastic card that says, the Geneva Conference provides protection for this man. There's my picture. So what the hell's that going to do? So I was very resolute about it, and I did carry a weapon. In terms of getting
You
meaner.
did get back to your platoon, that you were talking about getting chased around.
Yes, okay. Okay, then that terminates because I was lost. I was confused. I didn't know which direction to go. So I figured if they went that way, maybe they split up again. So I'll turn back and maybe I could get back to somebody in rear echelon that can tell me where they're at. But then I was so worried because they could call me deserter, that you left the outfit. You know? Fortunately, a colonel was coming up on his own, by himself, and he had a German machine gun strapped on his chest. He carried a machine gun in his hand, Thompson's up, in his hand, and he's so nifty, dressed up so neat. Yeah, damn it, soldier, what are you doing here? I said, sir, I lost my platoon. They went that way. And he said, follow me. I said, well, thank you very much. I'm greatly relieved. But I said, don't go that way because that's where the fire is coming from. I said, okay, we'll go that way. And then I started walking ahead of him. And he grabbed me by the neck and pulled me back. He said, don't you see that? I said, no, sir. And there was a wire with a hand grenade stretched, a booby trap. Oh, God. Well, he knew where he's going. He had the maps. He had the oversight of the whole picture. I didn't know what was happening. So he took me back to the platoon. And I got back to the platoon. And where the hell were you? I said, I was taking the care of the guy back there. He was wounded. But you're supposed to keep up with us. I couldn't do all that. And these guys started running and making a dash because the stuff is coming down from the trees. They're running for the open and beyond. Well, I got back to the unit. And they then reached this little burg, cleaned it out, went from house to house. No civilians. Abandoned town. And once they secured that little village, it wasn't too hard for them to do it. There was no resistance there. Now, another company would move through our company because we kind of spent our energies. This one's coming through. And they went a little forward. And my company and my platoon guys are looking at these houses and they're finding smoke houses, they're finding sausages and things hanging. And all we had was K rations. That's all we carried. We tore the combat jacket lining, opened it up, and took these Cracker Jack boxes and stuffed 6 of them around. And that would last you for quite a while. And another thing that I felt about it was good. I'll have more protection around this part of my body. So I stuffed my meals in there where when they saw, meats and stuff hanging in these kitchen smokehouses, they would eat it. I said, guys, don't do it. It may be set up for you guys to get poisoned. Oh, geez, you're crazy. You're crazy. Well, they didn't get poisoned, but they had diarrhea. God, they had diarrhea. And some people ask, well, what do you do when you're in infantry and you're outside all day? You're not in the home, you're in fields. Well, you take care of yourself. You dig a hole in the ground and you do it and you cover it. And you do it unobtrusively. half of the times, the guys didn't see you do anything. You cleaned yourself by taking water and I'll tell you one, but I don't know if you want it on tape. You can cut it, right? Okay. The medical doctor, a lieutenant, he said, "What do you know about personal hygiene?" You know, I told him, clean up much. He said, "Are you circumcised?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Well, you guys that are not circumcised, what you could do is you take your foreskin and you pull it up forward, then you release some urine, and then you shake it around, and then release it, and you have a nice, clean penis." Because that urine is good, clean stuff.
Okay.
Hey, so I did that. I told the guys, they said, "You're full of crap." Okay. Well, that's some of the things you have to do to take care of yourself. And the injuries that I saw were awesome. I did the best I could. It's the only thing I could say. But occasionally I worry.
Well, I'm sure the training that you got was not adequate from the sound of it. That you weren't prepared for. Well, I don't know if you could be prepared for what you saw.
Yeah, and what could I do? I couldn't evacuate the guy. I personally couldn't carry the guy. My job was to stay with them. It was for somebody else to come up and get him.
Yeah, the carrying companies come up and do that.
Yeah. And what did I carry? I carried the bandages, a knife, my sulfanilamide pills, sulfanilamide powder, all kinds of little gadgets that I figured out would help. Safety pins, put it through a tongue, hold it out. You know. Rough stuff. Real rough. One situation, this involves civilian scenario. One little town in Germany, just beyond the Rhine River, we had some bad times because people say the main assault of the Germans was over after the Battle of the Bulge. But we didn't know that because we were a platoon, and every time we met a problem, it was the big thing, the biggest thing that happened for us.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we're approaching this little town, and the guys spread out, and then they met resistance. So, okay, guys, hold it. Make yourself secure. They called in the heavy weapons platoon, which had their mortars and their guns, and they were lobbing their mortars over our heads into this town. And it's a very small town, really, maybe 12 houses. And these guys with the mortar in back of us are dropping them close, a couple of times behind us instead of over us. And that's so neat, you know. Well, after a while, no small arms fire come out of this town. So the guys put out some feelers. They fired their M1s into it and move up a little bit, and nothing's coming back. So you advance a little bit more, a little more. And then the person that was there, the soldier that was there, evidently ran away and hid somewhere and ran off to some other place. There wasn't much resistance. But these mortars hit many places where some people were killed. This little town, the people did not escape. They didn't have a piece of paper here. Yeah, there was a knoll, a high knoll here. The town was here. There's a house here, and a little patio like this, and a nice gate. And there was a little stream and a bridge. There's a nice cement bridge. I would say the county put it up, not these people that lived here. This like playground patio was hit. Mortars were dropping all around here. There were some people that ran under the bridge for cover. Mm-hmm. that was a big mistake. These mortars were dropping to the left, to the right of it, and everybody under there was killed. And there were civilians. The civilian that I looked at was a Pole, or a laborer.
A
that they
laborer,
brought in.
uh-huh.
Yeah, and he would, do things for people, free labor. In this house was a family. The grandmother was laying here. She was in a state of shock. I saw again splinters of shrapnel in the hand, in the body, no bleeding. A young boy laying over here, a man laying over here, and they're inside this room. You're looking down into that dining room area.
Mm-hmm.
There's a, what do you call those things, like a buffet with drawers?
Yeah, side cabinet of some kind.
Mm-hmm. And this becomes important. Now, I came in through this gate. All our guys were okay. Because now the village was secure. Now the job is to go from house to house and seek out and ask the question. Who is Soldaten? SS been here? We're looking for SS troops. And then some guys say, "Du bist Nazi?" "Oh, nein, ich nicht Nazi." "Oh, nein, that's it." And we look through their personals and their drawers and the pictures, and there was a picture of them at a parade carrying a banner. I'm in here, and I see this lady. I look at her, and she's in a state of shock. I turned around, and there was a young lady, about 28 years old, I estimate. She came over, and she slapped me in the face. And she started yelling and hollering at me, and I just didn't know what to do, and I kept saying, "Nix, nix, nix." And I tried to show her, I got medical stuff here. And so she laid off. Then I walked into the house, and I looked at this person that was dead. I figured, I can't do anything there. But I thought of this old lady, so I went here to this dresser, or whatever that is, and there was a feather thick on it. You know what those things are?
Mm.
They're big pillows filled with feathers.
Goose down.
Goose down.
Mm-hmm.
And it was real long, so it probably fit on a bed.
Mm-hmm.
It was laying there, and I was thinking this lady. So I went to pick up this feather pick, and this lady came and hit me in the head, knocked my helmet down. Oh, what the hell's going on? So I pushed her back, and I took this feather pick, picked it up, and that was her son. Boy, dead.
Didn't know.
Yeah. Then a young man, I don't know where he came from, he came in, and he said, "Bitte, bitte, come with me." So I went with him, and he took me down the back end to the basement. There was an old man down there in a state of shock. And I never saw a person in a state like this man was. He was totally limp, but yet he was snoring. I tried to wake him. I thought, he's in deep sleep. Nobody's ever explained to me what the hell kind of phenomena that is. He was actually snoring and laying there, and I couldn't do anything. And the kid wanted me to carry him up, but I couldn't because those steps were so steep and narrow. And I couldn't have. I told him, "Du bist gessen, your friends," and I speak brokenly, in sign language. They get it. They catch on. I said, "I have to go because my platoon is leaving." Mm-hmm. So I couldn't do anything for those people there. So I told him to do something about it. My obligation was to the guys, and we moved down further. That was a strange experience.
It's surreal, kind of.
I don't know if people in shock behave that way. Snoring, like they're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
They can touch them, move them, talk to them, ask them, come, pick up their hand. Nothing. Amazing. Well, several shells fell in there. And maybe the concussion did something. I don't know.
Maybe it was concussion.
Mm.
Did usually when you had people in the platoon who were wounded, you said sometimes you couldn't get them out because the radios, you couldn't contact somebody to come and get them.
Uh-huh.
Did that happen very often, or generally was it pretty quick moving the people out of
Occasionally,
field hospital?
occasionally be quick, sometimes be very slow. My best friend, that's not best friend, but friend. He lives in Chicago. I came from Chicago. We're both Polish. We talk the Polish language. He was hit by shrapnel right next to the temple. And, that's a dangerous spot. He got hit right there. The piece went into the cartilage, into the bone. And I was the first one there. I couldn't do much for him. It bled very little. I just dabbed it a couple times and put sulfanilamide on it, and the Germans happened at that point to leave their own foxhole. They abandoned it, and it was covered with logs. Since I was expecting more shells, I had him go under there. And it was period, maybe 3 hours that we were in that particular area. And here's a guy that's been hurt. I made contact to the guy with the radio to call back. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, because those things have limited power.
The communications can break down in a number of places on something like that.
Particularly when the infantry platoon only carried this walkie-talkie. You can get out of distance.
Yeah.
You could get into a definitely a low valley, and you got land over here, and the other guys were in the other valley, and occasionally we'd have the guy in a company that had a 300 radio, the one to carry on your back. Then communications were more powerful. But I have a little scenario story written up by one guy who laid 10, 12 hours, shot in the lung, shot in the kidney, shot through the hand, through the leg. His gut systems were shot. It's cold and it's raining. And he's laying there till it gets dark for somebody to pick him up. Medic from our outfit gave him a shot of morphine. Then he had to get out of there because it was one of those cases where he's going to get knocked out too. The other guys are pulling back too. That guy, just died. Yeah, this year he died. He made it through. He was carried, as he describes the story, he recalls that he woke up in a tent. That must have been a battalion aid station. And he said that there was a priest there and a doctor. And the priest asked him, "Son, do you want to pray with me?" And Durrell. He said, "No, thank you. I want the doctor." So the doctor went to work on him right away. And, then he recalls waking up somewhere in France. They worked on him. Then he evacuated him to England. And he wakes up somewhere in the United States. But he describes in detail how it felt getting hit. And at the moments, what he was doing and who was with him, what platoon he was in. And now this thing could be verified because those guys are living today and we have reunions every year. And say, "Hey, how about that? Is that right?" Well, it wasn't that town and it wasn't exactly raining, it was snowing. That kind of stuff, you know. So it's easier to talk to guys that were there. And it's harder for me to tell you because I have a mental picture. And when I talk to a guy from the outfit, he has approximately the same picture. If I say town of Vectornock, God, we all see this horrible picture. Yeah.
Externox was particularly bad.
Yes, it was. Yeah, but well, I was mainly bad for 417th Regiment. The first attempt was made. They lost so many men. Machine gun. My friend Joe McSannick was a champion swimmer in high school. He was in the Air Force with me, another cadet. In fact, many of the guys in my outfit were cadets and ASTP guys. Keith Lutzen was a cadet, and he's a first-class hero. He stopped a counterattack all by himself. Scenario. We're going toward the town of, I got it mixed up. It's not Rod. I was going to say Rod, but Rod was another counterattack. But this one, we're moving along a road that curls around a hill. This road is climbing, and the hill, we're going this way. On our left, the hill goes up. This little road, which is maybe 14 feet wide for the little wagons to go, not trucks, you know. And then this drops off the slope, and there's a forest. Beyond the forest is another road and the town. Now, our mission was to go up this road to get to a particular point. But the enemy was down there, and we later find out that they were drinking, they were drunk, and they were SS people, stimulated, all kinds of false stuff. We're coming up this road, and I needed to defecate. And there was a spot, like a minute. So I sit down there, and I'm doing my thing, and all of a sudden, the guys turn around and start firing down that place, and I'm looking, my first impulse was to duck and dive, but I couldn't because I had something else going on. And that held me back and held me a little more, held my concentration to what's happening. So I'm looking and geez, it's a real rifle battle, left and the right. But our guys had the upper hand because they were on a high ground and those guys were coming up. So when they were coming up, they were coming in the forest from the tree, picking up protection from the tree. But they weren't armed with anything special that can do our guys in. All right, some of our guys carried armor-piercing bullets. I understand you shouldn't have too many in your rifle because it will burn up the barrel. Some of our guys carried more than specs say, so they can hit a tree and go through the tree and hit whoever's behind it. So they stopped this particular counterattack, and I saw the whole show while I was doing my thing. None of our guys got hurt.
Good.
And then they were injured, hurt. Then Keith turns around and says to me, "Hey, Walt, you got some guys down there." And I said, "Well, I'm not going unless you guys go make sure there's no other guys going to come after them." So, okay. I had to wait about a half hour. So some guys went beyond those that were injured. And then I went down in a crotch in a creek and crawled. Came up to the first German who was laying. I turned him over. He had chest wounds. And he spoke French. 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 He spoke French.